church when I started beginning to surrender, and I began to call out the whole church to this lifestyle. It was radical. Nobody had ever heard it. They all thought I was a bit wacky. But I began to call and share and humbly share. And basically, when you lay out the reality of where we're standing, we are poor spiritually. And we are blind. I mean, we honestly need the Africans to come here to mission us, the Asians to come here, the Latin Americans to come here to minister to us, to help awaken us, to help deepen us, to help strengthen us. And because we're poor. And so there was a lady in the congregation that her husband had left her and gone and lived in with another woman and was set that way. And everybody was telling her, you need to go to school, you need to get a job, you need to basically do these various things. They're listing out what she needs to do. But I'm preaching this message. God is who he says he is. And he's calling us to trust him to be who he said he is. We need to step out. Stop taking our lives into our own hands. Trust him to be our Redeemer. Trust him to be our breakthrough, our deliverer. Trust him to be our guide, our teacher. Trust him. Depend upon him. Seek him to find him, to be the reality of these things. And this lady is coming to the place. So she fights through every fear, every doubt, everything. Everybody is pushing her. You need to do this. She has 4 children to take care of. All she is getting is $900 a month to take care of the 5 of them. That's not enough in any city in America. And so she finally comes to the place that she says, okay, God, I surrender. Now, this surrender is not a song or a word or a cliche. This is a reality. I am letting go. I'm going to trust you to be who you said you are. Now, remember, she's letting go of her will. She's letting go of everything. And she's willing to go wherever he goes. And she's fighting to trust him. I found often, you know, in the Bible, when they would lay their sacrifice on the altar and the fire would come down and consume the sacrifice, I have found often with many people in many different nations that when you sincerely and truly surrender, God will receive that sacrifice and show it to you. You know what he did with this woman? 2 days later, nobody else knows what she's prayed or done. A man in the church walked up to her and he said, I've never done this in all of my life. But this morning, God told me to do this. He handed her a blank check. And he said, make it out for whatever you need. Now, for her, that wasn't one blank check. That was God saying, I receive your sacrifice. I will take care of you from this day forward. That was 7 years ago. Do you know that woman has never taken a job? She is one of the deepest intercessors we have. Her life has been brought into destiny. And we've watched God take care of her on $900 a month for all this time. Now let me go on to explain. Times you would see people, no one family took her on as an offering. Just God would do it however he would do it. And we watched it month after month after month. Sometimes you would just see God move on people's hearts. Send this much, $600 to do this. But we just watched it. But then over time, you know, it loses its novelty. You know? And you're thinking, okay, all right, you know, let her, she'll be fine. Let's just go on with our own lives. God still he would send money from some strange place. And then one time, there was a couple in the church, and they had built another house, and they said, hey, this family, you want to come live in our house for what you pay for your little apartment? And she was really concerned, you know, God, I can't afford the electricity for that house. This was a big house. It's like 3,600 square feet. And I can't afford the electricity, the dues, the various things that go with the house. And the Lord is saying, trust me. You do not need to wait for a man to give you a house to take care of these children. I am your covenant partner. She had been waiting for a husband to come by one day then they'd get a house, and then that would help her really deal with some of the deeper issues with the children. And he said, I don't want you to wait for a man. I'm your covenant partner. Now, she stepped out. It was not easy. She had to fight, I think, 2 or 3 days to get to a position of trust because all the fears are coming. What if I can't pay rent to church people? I mean, that's embarrassing. What if, just all of this kind of stuff going on in her head, just going. She finally breaks through into trust. And she comes there, she says, okay, Lord, not knowing how she'll afford it. It's $1,200 a month. She's trusted God and seen him do all kinds of things, but it was still a challenge. 2 weeks after she received this and told them yes, she's supposed to move in, and the couple came up to her, and the man said, I've never heard God's voice in all of my life, but I know for sure he told us to give you this house for free for as long as you need it. Amen. That is one example of how God makes himself real when we let go of control. When we begin to say, my life is not mine, it belongs to you. I surrender my future because I want destiny. I don't want what I would build for myself. I surrender my family, my ministry, everything. I will follow you. Now, God makes himself real. I watched people try to just do what she did, and I watched a couple women get mad because it was almost like, well, why is God taking such good care of her? But you know what? He leads each one of us. He took every one of us through challenges that were severe, that we had to trust him. I don't know what it took, but I know that woman she had found that God is her rock and her refuge, that he will take care of her. And that is a point God wanted to drive deep into the core of her. I know there's other people. There's one man I saw God tell him, he said, I want you to love your wife and look for nothing in return. Look for nothing. And his thought was, she will run over me like a doormat. I mean, I've got to fight for my rights. I've got to stand up. I've got to toughen up sometimes because she can get hard. She can get mean. And God was showing him, until you begin to learn how to bring revival in your home, you can't bring revival one other place. Fight for my presence in your home. And so he would begin to learn to submit, to surrendering himself, to loving his wife and looking for nothing in return. But what do we usually find with surrender is all the things that are wrong inside of us. He began to find out how much self-protection he had, how much he stood up for his rights, how much anger he had, unforgiveness, and even adulterous heart that he had. That he really did have a deep place inside of him that thought the grass is greener on the other side. If I could just get a different woman, my life would be better. And so God was exposing this and exposing this. Surrender was not just a word to him. It was getting out into these things. And they were being exposed, and he was having to lay them down and lay them down and lay them down until he broke through, that he could honestly say, yes, Lord, I will love her and look for nothing in return. And as he did, I mean, honestly, the presence of God would begin to break open. He could walk into the house, he could tell by the children that she was not in a good place because the children are acting tense and tight, and he would be, instead of going to his defenses, instead of going to trying to grab control, instead of running away, he would go into surrendering and trusting God and seeking to submit to loving him. He said, sometimes when I would do that, he said, just the submission would change the spiritual atmosphere in the home. I didn't even say a word to her, and it would change things. Sometimes it was the love that would pierce through, and everything would become different. That woman was a very self-centered woman. I never heard her concerned for anybody else but herself, not even her children. But now that woman is one of the forerunners in beginning to lead the ministry out into the cities and the communities God's given our church to do, because her husband was willing to lay down his life. Now, what if he didn't lay down his life? You know she was wounded, right? You know she had experienced a lot of baggage. But somebody had to be willing to do it God's way instead of our flesh's way. And by willing to do that, there's a breakthrough. There's revival. I could go on and on. Just in my church,